Robert Palmer came to Kenny's Castaways. He called the club, and he was gonna interview the headliner, and I was opening the show, 6 nights a week, 2 shows, and he called the club, told me they were coming. He was coming, and he said, "You should come early and see the opening act. You might like it." And he came, and he wrote this amazing review that came out in the New York Times, and it was really interesting. He writes this article. I remember I saw it when it came out. I read it and I went, wow, it was just beyond my wildest dreams. I left Buffalo 1972, and I've been knocking around in New York playing, here and there, and all of a sudden this article comes out of the blue. And that night when I went to play Kenny's Castaways again, I walked in, it was a Friday night, it was absolutely packed, the streets. Got to the club and it was madhouse. You couldn't get in, and people that knew me for some years looked at me different. Everybody looked at me different. So there's something about something being in print that, whether it's it just seems to give a certain kind of power that is. I thought it was fascinating. It didn't. I was really grateful that he wrote that and thrilled, no doubt about it. But people treated me different, looked at me different. So I went on stage, and it was packed. I'm the opening act. It's not about me. I'm on stage solo, playing acoustic guitar, and I was playing rock and roll songs, but I had no money to hire musicians. I didn't want to join a group, so I got on stage. I used to introduce imaginary people behind me on bass guitar tonight, William Shakespeare, he's coming along, he's writing plays on the side, but he's starting to get it. And I would be jumping off the stage at the end of the songs. I was having fun. And there's a wraparound upstairs, and it was people hanging out. It was something fantastic. Next thing I know, like that night after the review, Clive Davis was in the audience, and right behind him was Lux Interior and Ivy Rorschach of the Cramps, who I knew. I loved the Cramps. I thought I'd be on stage looking and going, wow, there's Clive and there's Lux Interior. One of the best names in rock and roll, Lux Interior. When I finished the set, I wasn't even off the stage, and this guy comes up and gives me his card. He goes, "I'm Paul Rothschild. I produce the Doors, or I manage the Doors. I want to work with you." It was like, okay. It was fascinating to see the power of print, and my real friends were still real friends. And it didn't affect me, and I'd been struggling for a number of years, so, I wasn't, it didn't knock me off my balance, but it was pretty fascinating, I'll say that. Fascinating, because I'd only played acoustic guitar, I got signed playing that stuff on Bleecker Street and telling my stories, and it was a long, narrow bar. A lot of the more sensitive folkies had a rough time in that room, because the bar, the beginning half of the room was people would be talking, and once they go, they're drowned out. When I would be playing, they would say, "What's this guy going to do next?" And it was perfect for me. And I'd never played with a band before, ever. So I got J.D. Doherty, Patti Smith's drummer. I knew J.D. And there was a local band, the Criers, local in New York, but they're from Mississippi. Lead guitar player and bass player. And I got a guitar player from Boston, Peter Hoffman. Tommy Etheridge and Clay Barnes from the Criers. We rehearsed for about 4 days. And we went and made the album in a matter of days. First time playing with a band. I had always imagined these songs being electrified. Not all of them, but most of them. Anyway, so we make this record. It comes out, and it's just got a lot of attention right away. It was a sensation in its way. There were double-page spreads in Billboard, German newspapers, London Times, New York Times, whatever. Got a lot of attention, and I was told that Pete Townsend was a big fan of the album. And I just thought it was some record company Bull, and yeah, sure he is. I just didn't, sure he is. So we did a 3-week tour across the country. My first shows ever with a band, and it was really fun. Last show was in LA. At the Roxy. Freddie Mercury comes to the show. And we rocked, we had a ball. And after the show, Bill Curbishley, the manager of The Who, comes backstage, offers me the Who tour. I thought he was kidding. And I went, I don't think he's kidding. So going from playing to like a couple hundred, 300-400, whatever, all of a sudden it's 22,000, 15,000, 25,000, 20,000. And I still had the same naivete. I went, sure, all right. And I was told it's hard to open up for a Who audience because they want to see the Who. If I want to see the Who, unless the Clash was opening, then I would wait. And we did great. It was an absolute, to go from the streets of Bleecker with one acoustic guitar to 2 lead guitar players, a great rhythm section. At this point, Fred Smith from Television was playing bass with me. Great guy, great bass player. They're all really good guys. And we traveled across the U.S., and the record company wouldn't pay for it. They said, I think they thought the record had had its run. They weren't going to put any more money in. Normally you figure, well, we're going to get to play in front of 15,000, 20,000 a night. Can you support it? They didn't. They tried to talk me out of it. And I said, I appreciate you looking out for me, but this is the Who. I'm a fan. I'm doing it. So I went back to Bill Curbishley, and I said, they won't back it. He goes, well, what do you need? He said, have your tour manager work up a budget. And we did, and he says, he'll cover it. So it was the time of my life. I knew then it was magic. It was magic. The Who, come on. Yeah. It's great. Thank you, Pete. I've been on 2 major labels, and people tried for me. I don't have complaints. It's business. It is what it is, and I've had way more success than I ever thought I would. You go to New York to try to make records, usually you're going to get nothing. And here I toured with The Who, I toured with Ringo Starr, got to sing with Ringo Starr, and there's so many things that have happened to me. Played with Springsteen in front of 70,000 people. You can't make that up. And the independent route, I think, is really great because of the internet. Artists, y'all, you can pick up a guitar, you can pick up a couple of spoons. You'd be surprised at songs. Rachmaninoff began with spoons. Anyway, what's great about that, you can. Sometimes it's great to have advice and a label, an editor, or whatever, or not. You can just make noise with your buddies and or your sisters and make a record. I mean, look what happened. It happens, and put it out there. Just sing your song. Somebody will find. I had a great professor, Jack Clark, University of Buffalo. He taught a Walt Whitman course. I went back and took years later after I graduated. He was a great teacher, and he told the kids that year, the seniors leaving school, he said, look, just put it out there. Somebody will find it. Even if you write it on a napkin, express yourself, just do it. Put it out there. I love that when he says, just put it on a napkin, somebody will find it. It's not an easy road, but so what? What is easy? Yeah. I don't know if there's a recipe for being able to write. I don't force it. I don't sit down, I'm going to write now. I don't work that way. I just wait till it hits me. And normally, rock and roll is a young man's game, usually a young woman's game. The songs are still coming to me. I made 4 albums in the last 5 years. World War Willie, Positively Bob, the Dylan cover album, Children of Paradise, New York at Night last year, and Now the Day the Earth Stood Still. And I'll hang my hat on any of those records. Before that, there was a piano record, If I Was a River, an American Ride. My whole career is just ass backwards. And it feels really good. I never gave up. You know, I persisted. I just followed my instincts. If I had any advice, any people listening, you know, for what little I have to offer, I would say, just follow your heart, follow your dreams, do what you think. You know, believe in it, believe in yourself. Just give it. If you hit a brick wall, turn around and go another direction. But if you believe it and you mean it and it means something to you, it might mean something to somebody else. That's really it. I mean, if you want to be famous and be an idol, that's a different path, you know. But if you want to make music or paint or be a sculptor or write plays or whatever, just do it your way, trust yourself, believe in yourself, and give it all you got. Yeah.
Right.
Well, I've written a lot about New York. New York has taught me a lot, you know. I graduated from the University of Buffalo with a philosophy degree, but I moved to New York to try to make records. I love the city. I love the energy. It teaches me, still teaching me. This past year and a half with the pandemic, it's fascinating. If you would have told me 2 years ago, well, New York's going to be a ghost town in the spring of 2020, I would have thought you were nuts. Yeah, some places, but not this. It was every bit a ghost town. I thought it was fascinating. I dug it. You know, I still felt the energy of the city. These ghost-like haunted buildings looking down, knowing that behind all these windows, there are packed with people, because people were afraid to go out. You know, who knew what this thing was about, you know? I used to wash my groceries before I put them in the apartment. What? I thought, this is nuts. But I didn't know, so I did. And the songwriting on this record, I started to write. I write about stuff that comes to me when I get an idea, and maybe after all these years I have a better idea what ideas to follow. Like, that might be a good song. Well, I had a good batch of songs, and I thought this could be a record. And at the end of May, 2020, I was walking. My storage space is it's 1 block from the Holland Tunnel, southern Manhattan. Just a short block. And rush hour, 45 minutes to go 3 blocks. On a Friday, it's for quite a ways around, it's a parking lot. So this one Friday near the end of May, I went to the storage space and came out, walked to the corner of Varick and Spring, and I looked north. There was not a car in sight. All the way uptown, looking downtown to the tunnel. I stood in the middle of the street. I took pictures both ways because I couldn't believe my eyes. And like I say, I could have sat down in the middle of the street and sang Rolling Stone songs, which I probably should have done. And it was just, I thought right away, the day the earth stood still. It was nobody. And I walked home 7 or 8 blocks to my apartment, just thinking, wow, the day the earth stood still. I knew it was a song. And I think a week or so later, I was coming down 5th Avenue in a cab, seeing all these boarded up places from 80th Street all the way down to Washington Square Park. Not every place, but most of them boarded up, few people, few cars, and the song came to me then. The day the earth stood still, the day the earth stood still. I saw grown men cry, making out their will, the day the earth stood still. And I knew this could be something. And it has one of my favorite verses ever. When the ABCs of logic meet the CEOs of greed, and the SROs of loneliness stand up, rise up and start to bleed, there comes a time for judgment, a time to pay the bill. And that is just the way it was the day the earth stood still. I wrote that and I went, oh, okay, you know. I just let them come to me. I pay attention when I think there might be something there. Politicians were in the pockets. There were senators on the edge. There were Wall Street mooks shaking in their boots, standing on a window ledge. A cold north wind was blowing, giving everybody a chill. nothing moved out on Main Street the day the earth stood still. There was panic in the cities, there was terror in the town. There were teardrops falling on every street the day it all came down. There were mothers holding babies, wailing on the windowsills. There were preachers begging down on their knees the day the earth stood still. The day the earth stood still. The day the earth stood still. I saw grown men cry, making out their will. The day the earth stood still. When the ABCs of logic meet the CEOs of greed, and the SROs of loneliness cry out and start to bleed, there comes a time for judgment, a time to pay the bill. And that is just the way it was the day the earth stood still. The day the earth stood still. The day the earth stood still. I saw grown men cry, making out their will. The day the earth stood still. Yeah. Klaatu barada nikto, klaatu barada nikto, klaatu barada nikto. So if you see some heartache, and if you feel some pain, and if you see some lonely soul out standing in a pouring rain, offer up some kindness, compassion if you will, and remember well the way it was the day the earth stood still. The day the earth stood still. The day the earth stood still. I saw grown men cry, making out their will. The day the earth stood still. The day the earth stood still. The day the earth stood still. I held my baby tight in my arms. The day the earth stood. Klaatu barada nikto, klaatu barada nikto, klaatu barada nikto. I wrote like 3 or 4 of the songs like just a couple months before we went in. I was in Italy. We're talking October, September, December. October, November, December. And I was back and forth a couple times. And I wrote Time to Be Great. You know, watching the news, I'm thinking, well, what do we do? What are we supposed to do as human beings with the world falling apart, with the diversity and the people like not trusting each other, afraid of each other? It's like, I've been around a while and I've never seen it like this, as bad as this. And people are better than this. We can do better. Anyway, I just thought, well, what do we do? Time to be great. Let's be great. I'll try to be great, you be great. Let's pick each other up. I refuse to, I will never make a record. I can write about holy war or cell phones ringing in the pockets of the dead or earth blues, you know, about the climate change and the catastrophe that is unfolding to be. But at the end of the day, life is tough enough. I want my music to bring light. I want it to be positive. I want it to be inspiring. My concerts are like that. I want my records to be like that. This record, I mean, Blood on Your Hands is a pretty heavy piece, you know, and I end with, you know, I will stand, Time to Be Great, and Way of the Heart. I want it to be uplifting. My concerts are uplifting, my records are uplifting. If it's not that, I'm out. I'll do something else. You know, Steve Earle is a neighbor. He lives right around the corner, like 3 buildings away from me, and I see him on the street. Steve Earle is a great American treasure. His songwriting from the big early days, you know, Guitar Town and Copperhead Road, to all these records he's made over the years, and he does not hold back his opinion of things. I think the world of Steve Earle. He's a great American artist and a treasure. And so when we were nearly finished, we recorded the album in January. We all had masks on, 12 hours a day, masks, you know. And near the end, I'm listening to the roughs we had, rough mixes, and I thought, Steve Earle might be great singing on Blood on Your Hands. I thought, well, nothing ventured, nothing gained, I'll ask him. So I texted him, hey, Steve, I'm making a record. You know, I'm excited about it. You know, I'd love you to sing on something. And he wrote back, I'm around. And he came in, we had an amazing day, filmed the whole thing. He sang on it, took him 10 minutes. You know, he says, let me hear it one time. He knew it, but we talked about it a little bit. He went out there, let me just try singing along with it. Did it twice. And he says, can I do it one time without Willie's voice in my, because I had already sung it. And he did his verse and we had it. And I'm so happy, thrilled with how it came out. Steve Earle is, to have him part of this record, and that song in particular, means a lot to me. There's, you know, where I live in the village, Steve Earle is 3 buildings away from me. Patti Smith's a block and a half away, that way. Will Stevens a block and a half this way. There's still a lot of good culture and interesting times. I love New York. Still teaching me stuff.
With a way of the heart is the way of the river running home. The world is gonna turn. The flame will always burn. The way of the heart is the reason the mountain waits alone. Why I'm coming home to you. There are times in the darkness when I cannot find my way, when all my hopes and dreams are all lost and gone astray, when I'm standing in the shadows in the path of a coming storm. My hands are reaching out to find something safe and warm. The way of the heart running home. The world is gonna turn. The flame will always burn. The way of the heart is the reason the mountain waits alone, and why I'm coming home to you. Did you ever get the feeling that your faith had all but died, that all your seas dried up because of all the tears you've cried? If you ever get that feeling like your faith has all but died, just raise your weary head, see my arms all open wide. The way of the heart is the way of the river running home. The world is gonna turn. The flame will always burn. The way of the heart is the reason the mountain waits alone, and why I'm coming home to you. Reach out from the darkness, step into the rising sun, and remember, when you're all alone, you're not the only one. The way of the heart is the way of the river running home. The world is gonna turn. The flame will always burn. The way of the heart is the reason the mountain waits alone, and why I'm coming home to you. For the way of the heart is the way of the river running home. The world is gonna turn. The flame will always burn. The way of the heart is the reason the mountain waits alone, and why I'm coming home to you. Da-da-da, 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 da-da-da-da.
it feels so good to get back on the road. We started playing in April. We did a couple shows in New York. We've been in Philadelphia, you know, and now I've got a busy summer. We're rocking. I've been on the road. I'm really tired right now because of lack of sleep and travel and stuff, and great shows. So much fun. And the audiences, people come up and say, I haven't seen a show in 16 months, a live show. It's so great. You can see people smiling, beaming. My band, beaming. You know, people seeing friends in the audience. Rock and roll is a community, you know, at its best, the things that are on this planet, when people join together and celebrate something together. And these are total celebrations. I'm thrilled, and I can't wait to get on stage again. Well, as I said, I've been really lucky. You know, there's something to be said for believing in your dreams. You know, you never know. You know, there's brick walls everywhere we all run into. I've been really lucky, you know. Bruce Springsteen's been really kind to me, you know, and supportive, brought me on stage many a time. 70,000 people in Shea Stadium. No, Giant Stadium. Shea Stadium was 60,000, but he's not afraid to share the stage with people that he likes. I've been just lucky. I never thought these kind of things would be happening, but they've happened. I think it's just because I mean it. I'm not kidding. I mean, I was gonna say I'm not joking around, but no, I am joking around. It's supposed to be fun, but I'm serious about my work, you know. And I think that I've gotten really nice support from people like Bono and Who and it's a list that's embarrassing to even mention, you know. But I'm very grateful, deeply grateful, and yeah, it makes I'd still go, really? That happened? Okay, Mount Rushmore. Which 4 songwriters would I put on Mount Rushmore? My favorites. That's easy. There's about a couple of hundred I could draw from, but you want 4 people. Okay, I would say John Lennon, Paul McCartney, Bob Dylan, and of course my favorite, Harpo Marx. Nobody wrote songs like Harpo Marx. There was a zen quality about his work. Everybody understood it. Little kids, older people. But kidding aside, I'd like to see Mount Rushmore with McCartney and Lennon and Dylan and Harpo. They'd all be in each other's good company. That's great. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. I love coming. This is a great studio. I'm happy to be a part of it, and I always love talking to you, so thank you for having me.
Thank you, man.
Thanks for all the kind words.
Of course.
Yeah, man.
Cut.
Sanctuary, that's what she gives me. Sanctuary, gives it for free. Sanctuary, that's what she gives, and she